Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. In today's Dhamma talk, I want to focus on the importance of meditating paticca samuppada, or in English, dependent origination. For those who don't know, dependent origination explains the cause and effect system that describes our samsaric existence from birth till death and thereafter. It describes the causes of mentality and materiality within an existence. For those who are trying to identify the meaning of consciousness, I would direct you to understanding dependent origination, which provides great detail on the causes of consciousness. Recently, I have been asked several questions pertaining to paticca samuppada and meditation. A common question I get from those advancing in meditation is it necessary to meditate on paticca samuppada or dependent origination to attain nibbana? Is it necessary to meditate on dependent origination to advance to the higher insight or vipassana knowledges? This is a very important question, and the short answer to this question is absolutely yes. But in today's talk, I want to provide more background details, specifically in two ways. One, using information presented in the suttas and the commentaries or atthakatha, and secondly, discuss meditation and what are some of the knowledges that are developed when a person meditates dependent origination, and why certain levels of understanding are only achieved when dependent origination is meditated upon versus just reading or discussing or thinking about it. First, let us look at the Satipatthana Sutta from the Majjhima Nikaya. In English, it's also called Foundations of Mindfulness. The sutta is divided into several sections. Four main ones would be contemplation of the body, contemplation of the mind, contemplation of feelings, and contemplation of mind objects. For a beginner, the easiest point to understand that dependent origination is meditated upon would be in reference to the second noble truth in the Dhammanupassana section or contemplation of mind objects section. The second noble truth is the origin of suffering, and in brief would refer to craving. But when investigated, we can understand that all factors of dependent origination need to be understood for craving and thereby the origin of suffering to be understood. The more advanced meditator or scholar would know that in each of the prior sections, the arising of the object of contemplation and the cause for the arising of that object needed to be meditated upon. Example, in Vedanupassana or contemplation of feeling, we see the statement, he abides contemplating in feelings, their nature of arising. In the detailed version of contemplating their nature of arising, one would contemplate the conditions for the arising of feeling, the causes for the arising of feeling. One of these causes would be contact. In understanding contact fully, the contemplation of cause-effect would have to be completed. Thus again, the factors of dependent origination being meditated upon. Another sutta we could also refer to is the Mahanidana Sutta, or the Great Discourse on Causation. I will refer to Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's English translation. This is a discourse in which the Buddha elucidates upon dependent origination and its profundity, when Venerable Ananda states, "It is marvelous and wonderful, Venerable Sir, how this dependent arising is so deep and appears so deep, yet to myself it seems as clear can be." The Buddha responds, "Do not say so, Ananda, do not say so, Ananda. This dependent arising, Ananda, is deep, and it appears deep. Because of not understanding and not penetrating this Dhamma, Ananda, this generation has become like a tangled skein, like a knotted ball of thread, like matted rushes and reeds, and does not pass beyond samsara, with its plane of misery, unfortunate destinations, and lower realms. That statement in itself should suffice to state that dependent origination needs to be penetrated to advance in insight meditation and attain Nibbana. And finally, to quote the Visuddhimagga, which is the commentary by Acharya Bhadante Venerable Buddha Ghosa, we have the following statement. There is no one, even in a dream, who has got out of the fearful round of rebirths, which is ever destroying like a thunderbolt, unless he has severed with the knife of knowledge well whetted on the stone of sublime consciousness. This wheel of existence, which offers no footing owing to its great profundity and is hard to get by owing to the maze of many methods. Here, the wheel of existence is actually dependent origination. So from a Pali canon and then commentary context, we can see that it is essential to meditate upon dependent origination. But let us move from the theoretical side to the practical side of meditating dependent origination. The new meditator or first-time listener of dependent origination might find it difficult to understand all aspects of the meditation process and its benefits. So I want to focus on a few features that I think can be easily comprehended. In the 7 stages of purification that can be found in the Rattavinita Sutta, meditating on dependent origination begins at the 4th stage of purification, called purification by the removal of doubt. I quote Visuddhimagga. Knowledge established by overcoming doubt about the 3 divisions of time by means of discerning the conditions of that same mentality and materiality is called purification by overcoming doubt. So here, the meditator connects the causes and effects that pertain to his birth and existence of his present life. An example of a portion would be linking the karma that caused this present birth. So how would the meditator know this karma? How would he fulfill this stage of the meditation? He'll have to use a concentrated mind to see which karma gave rise to this birth. This karma can be from the last life or a life from many eons before. The only way for him to directly know this karma is to discern it with his mind. So at the outset we can see meditation of dependent origination is important. Reading about dependent origination or discussing it or listening to it can provide the preliminary foundation to incline the mind and discern these factors. However, the mind has to be inclined and the factors have to be known. This can only be done through meditation. In simpler terms, discernment is meditation, and to do so we need concentration as a base. But let's continue to understand what are the benefits of meditating dependent origination. I would like to quote another stanza from the Visuddhimagga. There is no karma in result, nor does result exist in karma. Though they are void of one another, there is no fruit without the karma. So this is a portion from the stanza. Now this is a very important piece of knowledge that has to arise in the person meditating in this stage. For him to actually have the knowledge that is clarified in this stanza, he has to understand the connections between causes and effects according to the conditional relations that exist between karma and its respective result, to such a deep level as to know: 1. The karma does not decide or actively cause the result. It is a condition. Also, 2. Nothing from the karma gets transferred to the result, although the karma is the condition. 3. In the same way, the result does not exist in the karma, but only arises as an effect. Finally, both these causes and effects are completely void of one another. So it's important to understand the only way such type of knowledge can be achieved is by directly knowing that specific karma and its specific result. Thinking or reading without directly seeing the causes and effects will not be sufficient enough to get the wisdom that's defined in that portion of the stanza. And let's look at another portion of the stanza. The karma of its fruit is void. No fruit exists yet in the karma, and still the fruit is born from it, wholly depending on the karma. For here there is no Brahma God, creator of the round of births. Phenomena alone flow on, cause and component, their condition. Again, this stanza or this portion supports our understanding that karma has to be discerned directly. The causes have to be discerned directly. The effects have to be discerned directly. It is only when that depth is achieved that this type of knowledge can arise in the mind. Then there's another aspect of discerning cause and effect, especially when connecting them in the stage of rise and fall. And this is taught as the four methods. The four methods become clear to the meditator. So what are the four methods and how do they become clear? Again, I will use the Visuddhimagga English version by Bhikkhu Jnanamoli as a base. When listening to this, also remember that the Buddha describes 62 types of wrong views. This section will illustrate how dependent origination meditation will help abandon some of those views. So now we're going to learn about the four methods. The first method is called the method of identity. In the Dhamma, existence is described as a continuity of mentality and materiality, or nama rupa. In the method of identity, the meditator understands the non-interruption of the continuity. As for example, with ignorance as condition, there are formations. With formations as conditions, consciousness, and so forth. Understanding this abandons the view of annihilation, because by linking cause and effect, the unbrokenness of the continuity is understood. Here, since the meditator is discerning the causes and effects, he can understand that there is no being that is annihilated. However, they further discuss in the Visuddhimagga, if the person sees it wrongly, they will apprehend the identity or will apprehend an identity in that non-interruption of continuity. And by doing so, they can take the eternity view. So if he sees it wrongly, they can take the eternity view. However, we should remember, if the person is distinctly discerning the causes and effects to the point where each one is understood with wisdom, then the apprehension of that identity within the continuity cannot arise. Hence again, meditation of those causes and effects is essential. You might have even heard of this view of identity when people sometimes describe the mentality and materiality as a continuity these days. It's sometimes quite common in certain Dhamma talks. This leads us to the second method, called the method of diversity. Here, the meditator defines the individual characteristics of ignorance, formations, consciousness, etc. One who sees this rightly abandons the eternity view by seeing the rising of each new state. And one who sees it wrongly clings to the annihilation view by apprehending individual diversity in the events in a single continuity as though it were a broken continuity. However, when we did the previous method, which was the method of identity, we can remember that the annihilation view is abandoned when that is done correctly. Then we have the third method, the method of uninterestedness. The absence of interest on the part of ignorance, such as formations must be made to occur by me, or on the part of formations, such as consciousness must be made to occur by us, and so on. This is called the method of uninterestedness. One who sees this rightly abandons the self-view by understanding the absence of a maker. One who sees it wrongly clings to the moral inefficacy of action view, because he does not perceive that the causative function of ignorance, etc., is established as a law by their respective individual essences. Then finally, we have the method of ineluctable regularity. Here, for example, the production of only formations, etc., respectively, and no others, with ignorance, etc., as the respective reasons, is known or called the method of ineluctable regularity. One who sees this rightly abandons the no-cause view and the moral inefficacy of action view by understanding how the fruit accords with its condition. One who sees it wrongly by apprehending it as non-production of anything from anything, instead of apprehending the occurrence of the fruit in accordance with its conditions, clings to the no-cause view and to the doctrine of fatalism. Again, the latter is eliminated if he sees the causes and effects correctly. Okay? So once we dive into these four methods and understand the importance and understand how much or how many views are actually eliminated, we can understand that, and to do that, we have to actually discern each and every one of the causes and effects. We can understand that meditation is the only way to directly discern these. Recitation of the words or discussion or listening will not be enough to obtain that level of wisdom with respect to the above four methods that I just mentioned. So there are many other aspects of Paticcasamuppada or dependent origination that can be discussed to support the argument that it's necessary to meditate upon dependent origination. But I think the factors we discussed today should be enough to justify meditation of dependent origination in terms of attaining Nibbana or developing the higher insight knowledges that will lead towards Nibbana. I hope each of you can find this useful, and hope each of you can practice Paticcasamuppada meditation one day, dependent origination meditation one day, and use that wisdom as a supporting cause for your attainment of Nibbana. Theruvan Saranai to everyone.